Hi, I'm Janet Harvey, CEO of inviteCHANGE, and you're about to watch a coaching session. Yes, even a CEO has a coach. In fact, I don't know what I'd do without it. John Arnold and I have known each other for a number of years, which is the reason I asked him to coach me on today's subject, which is all about the leadership and executive presence from me to carry a global coaching conference we're doing in the fall. So you're going to hear me go through that thinking process with my partner as coach. And John is an ICF credentialed coach at the PCC level, as well as a business consultant. However, he will not be speaking on that. What you're going to see is really the behind the scenes of what happens when a business leader gets an opportunity to do their own critical thinking, hear themselves think, and be asked questions that deepen that learning. Hi, John.
Hi, Janet. It's great to see you as always.
Thanks, John. I'm looking forward to our time together.
I am too as well, but as part of my process, I am always checking in a personal side and love to hear how Russell and Whidbey Island and Kitching are coming along before we jump into our work.
Well, I've managed to pick the carpeting and the bamboo, and I'm about halfway through the appliance list, and I'm waiting on drawing. So I'm quite excited about where the kitchen is going, and Russell's doing fine. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. Well, Janet, given the magnitude of the project you're about ready to undertake, which I suspect is probably something bigger, larger than you'd ever imagined, and I'm excited to talk through that. What would be helpful for us to work on today, and what would you like to accomplish in our call?
And the piece we're focused on right now, as we finish up selecting the marquee and plenary speakers, is inviting the practitioner community to submit their proposals. And I've been thinking a lot about I don't know, this is kind of a tough thing for me. A lot of people know me in the field, or they think they know me. Exactly. And there's something really specific that I'm wanting them to catch the spark of. This is not a traditional coaching conference in the terms of what's the cool thing that they do that they want to share with other coaches. This has got a much bigger application that we're thinking about in terms of social progress. And I want to be really thoughtful about the messaging. And I thought today what we might work through is some of that. I want it to feel personal and intimate. At the same time, I don't want to write an individual email to each person. So I'm looking for a way to kind of really get to the key messaging that will be compelling. Somebody will want to submit, but they'll also be clear what we're up to and whether their methodology or approach or the learning that they want to contribute is useful.
Excellent. Thank you. That's really helpful. I'm curious about what would be the differentiator. As coaches, we're invited to submit proposals all the time. We get excited. This is something as a coach that no one has ever imagined possible. And you have stretched the boundaries of your own wonderful mind and imagination. So how were you thinking about a practitioner proposal that will challenge even the most experienced coaches to submit something that even surprises themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question to start with. So I've had the dream of this conference for more than a decade, and I've known forever, and I think proved the theory with the work of the foundation, which is now 16 million people being affected in over 85 projects around the globe, that coaching provided to leaders is the way to amplify and accelerate producing results. And it doesn't matter what we're talking about. It could be a school superintendent being more effective. It could be teachers in the course room. It could be an executive director of a grant writer who or a granting foundation that is supporting education. And it could be any of those angles is what the foundation focused on with education. So now, if that proves the case, then what we're really looking at is what's the social progress topic area that we want to get a deeper learning in, and how do we understand the application of coaching to that expert's perspective? So somebody who's an expert in climate emergency, climate crisis, maybe from the angle of how do cities respond to it? What are the things they could be doing? What would the coaches be providing the leaders involved in that initiative? That's what we want them to bring to the conference. What is the way in which they might recommend leaders doing their own personal and professional development? What is the project planning process? What is the stakeholder management process? What is the development of the change management messages process, right? So it's the application of this kind of foundational practitioner method called coaching to social progress, which requires that at least I think this, maybe you have a perspective here. I think it requires that the practitioner step out of their ownership of it and to look more fully at what's the influence and impact we want to have, and why is coaching the solution that we think will help amplify and accelerate the work of leaders in that social good angle. Oh,
I love that, Janet. And what comes to mind is the challenge of a different level of self-awareness. Mm-hmm. We talk about self-awareness all the time. You're clearly raising the bar here around self-awareness and redefining what social change really is, and challenging what 30, 40,000 practitioners, professional coaches, to take their game to the next level, but at the same time, take a hard look in the mirror and be willing to stand up for what they really believe in. And to your point, a call to action that takes not only their work to the next level, but those that they are inspired by, those leaders, business leaders, social leaders that they choose to follow, and at some point in time possibly coach inside their respective organizations. You're onto something that's amazing at so many levels. So I'm wondering if this is a helpful question, as coaches submit their proposals, who will sit on that committee? Who will be the decision makers, and what will be some of the deciding factors, as you're likely to receive proposals from all over the world and from different levels of coaching, as we all understand the requirements to coaching certification. My curiosity is around, how are you thinking about the selection process for those who choose to submit a proposal?
So I'm going to bypass kind of the standard stuff. Do you have experience? Have you presented before? Let us see a video, all of the things that, is this person going to be confident and comfortable in front of a live audience, knowing it's also simulcast? So let's just put those off to the side for a moment. So it will be myself and our head of public relations, who's doing all the messaging for the conference, our head of sales and marketing, and then we've picked 3 other team members who are in different generations, because our hope is that we are attracting not only folks who are currently in very high-level leadership positions, think the president of Delta Airlines, for example, but we would also have late teen young adults, so the 20-year-old somethings in the world who care about these issues, that they're in the room together. So there is a kind of an emotional maturity beyond emotional intelligence. There's a maturity to be able to speak to a diverse audience in all criteria that you would think about. So we're looking for that maturity for sure. And we're also looking for a certain confidence level. Do they really believe in what they want to impart as a co-learning experience? And I say co-learning because we really will see in every workshop that the subject matter experts in the particular social cause track are side by side with the practitioner. So we're not just talking theory, we're being practical and pragmatic, and someone who's able to weave in content with process and make a much more robust call to action at the end of each of their sessions. And that's not necessarily common to coaches. So part of the messaging needs to invite them to think that way and demonstrate that they can design a learning session that would provide that.
That's awesome. Is it your expectation, or is it helpful for them to talk a little bit about how they imagine showing up for the 2020 Be Choose Cause Global Coaching Conference? Are you thinking that they'd be able to talk about how the work that they'll deliver will impact Be Choose and Cause?
Yes, absolutely. Primarily how it will impact the cause of their choice. That they want to support one of the three, it's fine, or something they think is common amongst the three. So that's probably a really important message to distinguish. And then either the be or the choose track. So the be is much more about the being, how to be generative, how to be authentic, how to be sovereign in our way of being, and will be the learning environment there. And the choose track is more of the how. The method, tool, resource, practice that's effective when supporting a leader who is working in social progress. So they have to demonstrate the alignment and congruence of what it is they want to offer with the intentionality of those two tracks.
Awesome. So Janet, we've talked a little bit about practitioner proposals. Would it be helpful for you in the time we have remaining to talk about your vision of the social business or other leaders that might be attracted to either support or show up for your conference?
You know, I'm realizing as you asked that question that I hadn't been thinking that much about, yeah, that's interesting. So I have been thinking about leaders coming and being subject matter experts. So folks who are already working in the social progress arena of either climate emergency, healthy communities, or human trafficking, to be a provider of education to practitioners who think they might know, but aren't close enough to realize what's actually happening, so that the practitioners are calibrating, oh, so that's how a coach might work with a leader who's doing X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But truthfully, there may be some leaders who already possess some coaching capability that may have something to share in terms of methodology. And I hadn't been thinking about them as potential respondents for the educational session. So that's really useful. I have been thinking about panels. I thought that I have a sense, I don't know if this is true, so I'd be curious what your feedback would be here, that there is a place for folks in all three of those tracks, of those social progress subject areas. If there was a panel of three of them well moderated, would we see the patterns that are common? Because they're working in an area where there's high urgency, high disruption, likely a fair amount of risk associated with choices that we make, probably a fair amount of investment required, a need for a multidisciplinary, multi-stakeholder management strategy. That's my hypothesis, that those things would be common amongst the three. I wonder if it's true. Like, I'd like to prove that hypothesis or disprove it, as the case may be.
Or disapprove it, right?
Right. So that everybody in the audience learns that, yeah, I haven't said this out loud. I want them all to walk away realizing that if the only thing you do as a result of these 2 days is change your mindset about who you are every single day influences these initiatives, that's enough. But the next is, and what conversations will you have as a result of this? How will it change the way that you speak about social progress in your day-to-day lives personally, in your professional lives with your clients and customers? And ultimately, would you be involved with a local initiative? Would you contribute to a global initiative? Would you be part of a forum? How will you realize that what you think and say and do post this conference does actually contribute to rolling it forward? Because so many people think the only thing they can do is write a check. And it's actually the worst thing we can do.
Exactly. Because it's so easy to do.
Yeah. And it actually then puts us in a powerless position relative to this is an interesting message. So I think it puts us in a powerless position because then other people make decisions about how to spend that money, and it isn't necessarily in alignment with what our own value system is. Whereas getting involved, contributing our voice, inviting others to join us, taking actions. That's why I like Hearts and Hammers, right? In local communities where neighbor and neighbor are swinging hammers and using the screwdriver and cutting the lawn and taking stuff to the garbage. And they get to see, oh, this is how we build community. This is how we take care of each other. That's just a small microcosm of what we want to stimulate as a result of the conference. And so I think maybe that's another message that would be useful.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. I'm wondering if this question is important, and if it's not, I know you will dismiss it. At this juncture, we're months away from the biggest undertaking that you and your team have ever taken on before. When you take on the coaching world and the three topics that are clearly top of mind globally for social, civic, and any kind of a leader. Mm-hmm. Anything that we haven't discussed that you might be concerned about that you haven't shared?
That I'm not the least bit concerned. I keep asking myself this question every day. I'm like, this is a really big deal what we're doing here. Yeah. And I don't feel concern. I feel inspiration, excitement, and ready. I think we've assembled a great team. I think we have clarity about what we want to accomplish. I think it's relevant and timely. I think people are hungry for the opportunity to figure out how to go from powerless to empowered, mm-hmm. and do it in a meaningful way, and on their own terms. And I think we're a solution for that. And that feels fantastic. It feels like the energy is right. I said it's been a dream for a decade and it hasn't been right. So I haven't brought it forward, but it does now. This feels like it's answering a call that I can hear very clearly in all three of these particular social arenas. And ultimately, I think maybe we've just forgotten a little bit how to be civic minded. And it's hard to do when people are feeling disadvantaged in some way, or how do I get off this hamster wheel? I'm too darn busy in order to give back to my community. And yet that's the reason why. And there's such dissatisfaction and inequity in the world, right? There's a balance in life that's required. And in some ways it's about restoring that balance. And that feels like a really valuable thing to do. And I think the only thing that I think more deeply about is my own messaging to people who think this is Pollyannish or fantasy. And I think that's part of the problem, and that people don't think big enough and give themselves permission to say, and here's my part. And I want to give them a vehicle where they can go, oh, I see now. That's what my part could be. And they say yes to it.
I'm shaking my head and smiling because we're like-minded there. And it begs the question of, it sounds like instead of calling people out, you're right. calling upon people to rise up for these causes, mm-hmm. which requires a ridiculous amount of self-awareness and courage at the same time to step into this awareness and to hold themselves accountable about taking their coaching game to the next level, or their leadership game, or whoever it is. I suspect, Janet, that you'll likely have participants beyond professional coaches that will be attending your conference, and be curious to hear you maybe on a future call, hear how you plan to leverage those attendees in a way that not only supports the causes that you're going to be talking about during the conference, but those causes going forward for many years to come.
Yes, in fact, my hope is that we have 60% leaders from organizations of all kinds, ones who are who care about it. They have foundations and they care passionately about these issues, as well as organizations that are deeply embedded into these particular social topics, and 40% practitioners, and that they're co-learning together, so that the separation between the two becomes irrelevant. They're mutual resources. So practitioners learning from leaders, understanding what they're facing every day, and being really good listeners on behalf of those leaders to support them to find the courage and the confidence to keep going and to restore themselves, to have balance in their personal and professional lives, not the sacrifice model that I know I certainly grew up with, as you sacrificed your personal life in order to give to your community, and yet that's a not sustainable model. So we're looking for something different. I think we've forgotten how to teach. Isn't quite the right word. I know you and I, we've had people in our lives who we looked up to and said they really understood what it meant to give back and how to build community.
Yes.
And that was our role model. But they're few and far between. There aren't enough people that were in my lives that influenced me that way. And I think that's part of what I'm longing for, is that we restore a sense of our ability to do that for each other. Each of us. Ordinary human beings. I'm not into pedestals and gurus. I think those days are behind us. And we need to learn how to be in collective with each other. And this is what I'm hoping to inaugurate.
I think it's wonderful. I wonder if you're about ready to release a whole other generation, not in age, but of people that have wanted to be inspirational or inspire others and didn't know how.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that one of those paths are likely to be that people will finally, you use the terms confidence and courage. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes we just take those words for granted. Mm-hmm. And now those actually be actionable, because people will find themselves to truly be inspired and understand the impact of that inspiration. And that might be something we explore in our next call.
What's popping to mind, courage meaning of the heart, and confidence meaning to confide. And we often think about confidence as something we're confident in another. Like we exude confidence that has people want to follow. And I think there's a more deeply held component to this. It's what I call sovereignty, but maybe the word confide. Well, I confide with myself that what I see and what I believe and what I care about most matters. And when I stay connected to that, so that's the self-awareness piece, then I have an opportunity to make my contribution and not wait for someone else to do it. It's sort of like being the armchair politician and we yell at the TV, like, how could you believe that? Well, get out and knock on doors, and convene a conversation at the dinner table about that policy and how it's going to impact the community. And I think we've lost the art of that kind of conversation. Now, I grew up with never talk about sex, religion, or politics. And I'm thinking to myself now as an adult, that's ridiculous. Those are important things to be talking about, and to not have so much charge and energy on them that it separates us, but rather to be able to explore them and respect each other's points of view. And so I think there's a lot I'm wanting to stimulate and initiate as a result of this. And this is the beginning of something that I hope is a living legacy and happens every other year all around the globe.
Oh, I have no doubt that that's going to happen. In the few minutes that we have remaining, have we missed anything? Is there anything that we haven't touched upon on our work together today?
So let me see if I can summarize some of the key messages, which is what I was wanting to get out of our time together. We started at the criteria. And so I think there are a couple of messages here that are really important in the request for proposals itself, which is that to pay attention to how does what you bring forward amplify and accelerate a leader of a social cause in their work in the world. right? So that's that influence and impact piece that you're talking about.
Exactly.
And then I think the second one we talked about is the what is the way in which they will show up to co-create with the experts in the room? Rather than being expert, how will they create an experience for the experts in the room to embrace the process that professional coaching is in the context of social progress? So I think those are two really important ones. And then I think there are a couple of messages we've just talked about that are more specific to the leaders who are in organizations that either work in this space or care about this space and contributing to it, about what's possible and available to them, what we want them to bring as subject matter experts, and then the same second question, really, which is, what is the way in which you will co-create with a practitioner to see where the intersection benefits the social cause? So how do they think about amplifying and accelerating their work? That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but it could be asking them to answer the same question, but from two doorways, right?
For two doorways, for sure. And as you know, oftentimes in our work together, that the more we talk about things, the more even you, with that brilliant mind, have a new awareness about something. When I see you go, yes, that might be something worth exploring. So I can just picture the team going, oh, she's doing it again. She had a coaching session, and here we go.
No, they're used to that. And so the kind of the action step for me now is to go back to the editorial calendar and take a look at what do we have already in the messaging for the RFP for each audience, and take a look at this second message in particular about accelerate and amplify from both sides. How does the leader think about that? How do practitioners think about that? And I think that will help us frame some of these tracks a little more specifically, which is quite exciting. I'm delighted to hear that come out of my mouth. They've been asking me for this information, which is the reason I brought it to coaching today, because it was clear that I was too transactional and I hadn't quite gotten to the zeitgeist that I think we want to express.
Do you think it was important, though, since this is something you've never undertaken before, to be somewhat transactional to get to this point in time or this stage in the process?
We've hired a wonderful conference management team. I complete confidence in their ability to pull this off. And, my role as the host really is to put the right esprit de corps and emphasis in place. And of course, I'll be doing a lot of speaking and talking about this for the rest of the year, bringing it forward. So there's enough structure now that this is the right timing for this to drop in.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we have some work to do on our next session, don't we? Or you have some work to do for our next session, I should say.
Yes, and you bringing your curiosity is useful, see, because I like to think out loud, as lots of clients do, right?
This is very true. Yeah. Well, thank you as always for the work that we do together. It's an honor for me to work with you, and I'm excited for what you are creating. I imagine myself, I can't even begin to describe all of the people and all of the colors and the impact. I see the world shifting axis at some point in time based on what you're creating. So I look forward to our next call.
Thanks, John. Appreciate the partnership.
Take good care, Janet. Thank you.
You too. Surely you were able to see in that session that my thinking evolved from the beginning to the end. In just a short 30 minutes together, I was able to deepen what I was thinking about and bring clarity to my messaging, which was the outcome I was looking for from the session. And I left with a clear action plan for how to implement it. This is the reason professional coaching is so powerful. So if you enjoyed this, there are many more examples of professional coaching accessible to you here on our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.